Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, another excellent week for the Mets, who won 5 out of 7. We break down their continued strong start, go down on the farm to talk Brandon Sproat, review our scoreboard predictions, and of course, answer your mailbag questions. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SNY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Spring is the season for new beginnings, and it's the best time to get behind the wheel of a sophisticated new Cadillac SUV. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined, as always, by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And Joe, another strong week for the Mets. 5-2 across the 7 games they played since our last podcast. Of course, 2 losses and then 5 straight wins. The pitching continues to be good. Their play at home continues to be even better. And the Mets right now looking like one of the best teams in baseball.
Winning is fun, Connor. And the fact that we are here recording on April 22nd and the Mets already have 2 winning streaks of 5 games or longer just shows the kind of talent this team has and their ability that on any given part of this calendar throughout this year, they're going to be able to rally off, a multi-game winning streak. It's not going to be, 1 win here, 2 wins here. They have the opportunity to be a win 5 in a row, win 6 in a row. So very fun to watch the Mets play baseball right now.
I think that sums it up. It's sometimes not about the wins, but how you respond to your losses. And the Mets, with, 2 more annoying than brutal losses, win 5 in a row. And that says everything about this team's mentality and how they carry themselves and how they carried themselves really since last summer. Of course, subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. If you'd like to drop us a review, you could leave a mailbag question with that review and it'll appear in one of our episodes. We really appreciate those. Of course, if you watch on YouTube as well, you can leave a question in the comment section. We will check under the shows there as well. All right, Joe. So this team's 10-1 at home. Francisco Lindor has gotten rid of all the demons of his slow start from last year. And it was kind of funny this year because for the first couple of games, really the Houston series, it was like, here we go. It's like Lindor again. He just needs time. It's how it goes. And that is just not true. Lindor has been out of sight from the leadoff spot, Joe. It's the power. It's the moments. Obviously, the walk-off against the Cardinals, with our pal Steve Gelbs filling in for Gary with an electric walk-off call. It was just Citi Field, by the way. I have not gotten to Citi Field this year yet because, the NFL draft is in 2 days. So I've lived in a cave evaluating 300-plus players. We'll get there a lot this summer. Joe, I know you went to the opener, and you've been since. The gnat sound through the TV and the visuals of a rocking Citi Field and the Mets players acknowledging it almost every game after every home game, it has been a sight to see so far, Joe, compared to last year.
It's a double-edged sword a bit, Connor. I'll be going to Wednesday's day game against Philly, day before the NFL draft, which I know is your Christmas, and it's something that I'm very into as well. But Wednesday, I'll be at that game. I'll be honest, when I see these packed concourses, I'm like, ish. I don't want anything to do.
I get the same way sometimes.
I don't want anything to do with the packed concourses, but if I'm watching, especially on TV, the environment has been so loud. And every year, it always feels like there's excuses made in a way where it's like, it's April, so it's cold. People don't want to go. Or they didn't get off to the hottest start, so people don't want to go. This is a perfect marriage of they signed a guy like Juan Soto, which got more season tickets, got more individual tickets bought. And they just happen to be winning a bunch of baseball games. So fans want to show up, and there is nothing. There's nothing like Citi Field. When the Mets are a winning, successful team, they are a genuine home field advantage in a sport that's not like football. It's not like basketball. It's not like hockey. There's not so much home field advantages in baseball, but Citi Field is that one location, I think, that has the opportunity where they are so loud. They do all the different things when opposing teams are bringing relievers in. They shut the lights down. They do that siren type of noise that kind of throw them off a little bit. It's a true home field advantage, and I love seeing that the players are just fully embracing and shouting it out every single day.
Well, I think it's the way they built their team. They have a lot of players that feed off of the adrenaline
Yeah.
of a crowd. I think Pete Alonso is that way and has always been that way. Lindor is obviously the pinnacle example of that. I think I know it was a foul ball, but in the moment when it was called fair, it felt like Soto wanted to give the crowd a show on that. That's just the kind of team they've really built. Diaz has always been like that. Diaz is a totally
Yeah.
different guy when he comes into
Jesse
a
Winker,
Jesse Winker's the
who hit a
perfect
home run in
example.
Monday's game. Yeah.
Jesse Winker has had some really great years early in his career. He was a little lost for a year or two, and he has fit in with the Mets and the Mets fan base and the Mets culture quite perfectly, honestly. And I think the crowd plays into that as well. And you're right, Joe. I remember, the first time I went to playoff games in Citi Field, I remember 2015, I went to at least one game against the Dodgers, went to a World Series game. I almost couldn't believe where I was because it felt like being at a football game with how intense the crowd was, how the place was rocking, how well built Citi Field is to handle
Yeah.
a full capacity, and just how into it the Met fan is. And not that they've been chasing that since because they've had moments where they've matched that. But I can't remember a time, Joe, during this early in the season where it's felt like that. That's what's different to me as I'm looking at this and going, man, I've been to plenty of Met playoff games at Citi Field. This crowd in April right now looks exactly like those playoff crowds on weeknights. That's what's crazy to me is it's weeknights they're showing out. And the best part is, Joe, not only is this team giving them a show with wins, this is a fun team to watch play the way they play, whether it's Acuna on the bases, whether it's a different pitcher almost overachieving every single night. And obviously, the superstars in the 1 to 3 spots in the lineup are just must see TV or worth every price of the ticket right now.
And Connor, if you think about 2015 and 2024, probably two of the most fun years since Citi Field has opened, both those teams got off to miserable starts. Obviously, last year we could go, it was 0-5 to OMG and, getting to 11 games under. And 2015, people forget because you have the documentaries highlighting the trade deadline and all the stuff that happened. That was a team in May or June.
Oh, it was rough.
Just like, yeah, who are they selling? They can't hit the broadside of a barn. This team is off to a hot start. Fans are buying in, players are bought in, and that to me is the recipe for what is a team that right now, as of this recording, is tied for the best record in baseball with the Dodgers and the Padres.
And I think with great teams, right? And I hope the Mets truly end up being a great team. Right now, they look like they're on that trajectory. You have the stars, right? And Soto's going to be better than this. Lindor and Pete are obviously just been incredible. And we've talked about this, like Nimmo and when Vientos is healthy, like they're going to be better versions than this, we think. But great teams have unsung heroes or players that have moments or players that don't get a lot of shine. It feels like this team, last episode we talked about Tyrone's in that light. I think Tyrone Taylor is somebody that he kind of just, the moment finds him often. And yeah, he's a fourth outfielder, but whether it's his defense or he's not always going to hit, but the ability to get the big hit. And now I'm kind of feeling it, Joe, a little bit with Luisangel Acuna, where whether it's the speed on the base paths, the plus defense, but he's also swinging the kind of bat the Mets need in the lineup where can you be a slap hitter? Can you put the ball in play? Can you lace the ball into the outfield and have your speed come into effect on the base paths where he's even starting to have some moments like that, Joe? Role players are just as important on a great team.
Speed is a game changer in this sport. And a thing that we just haven't had much of as Met fans in recent years is that game-breaking speed that Acuna brings to the table. So we haven't really been able to experience it. You've seen it with other teams. What I find really interesting about this whole Acuna situation is it's why player development and evaluation of these guys as they're coming through the system and making their major league debut, why it's so hard to project some of these guys forward. You couldn't have convinced me this time last year that Luisangel Acuna could be doing this at the major league level. Even David Stearns in spring training sounded like a guy that didn't entirely believe what he saw from Acuna in that short sample size in September when he came up, while Lindor was dealing with the back issue. At this point, when Jeff McNeil comes back, however this roster shakes out, Luisangel Acuna has to get a significant amount of playing time somewhere on the diamond. So they need to find a spot for him. I don't think he should be going back to AAA Syracuse. I think at this point, unless there's obviously a big slump or something, those days might almost be behind him. Get him ready for center field to take some reps there. Get him to split some time at second base with McNeil. But Acuna needs to be in the lineup routinely because, as you said, the bat has taken a step forward, and they really need that athleticism both in the field and on the base paths.
Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to roll this in slowly so you can think about it. A little pie chart exercise, percentage exercise. Pete Alonso, scorching start. He's been one of, if not the best hitter in the National League so far this year. Percentage-wise, pie chart-wise, how do you designate the blame from, one, the home run he hit against Devin Williams against the Brewers last playoffs that just has seemed like it's taken a gigantic weight off of him at the plate ever since then. Two, the fact that he's technically not in a contract year anymore. And sure, he could opt out, but if he opts out, that means he had a good year and he's feeling great about it. He has some kind of security, not as long as he wanted, but some kind of security. And then three, and I know he hasn't been himself, but the presence is still a thing, clearly. Juan Soto being in this lineup, Joe. How do you designate a pie chart or those percentages each to what has led to this level of a successful hot start for Pete?
So that's very interesting you put it that way, Connor. And the Soto aspect of this, I think, has had impact on both Lindor and Alonso.
I agree. Yeah.
Protection goes both ways. It's the hitter in front of you and the hitter behind you. It all plays into it. So Lindor is seeing pitches to hit that, despite what Juan Soto has done so far, which has not been bad. I want to clarify. Like, people have, I think, taken it a little out of context. It just hasn't been everything we've hoped and dreamed that Juan Soto would be. You still don't want to face him, and then he's going to take pitches, and then that gets to Pete. But I will still put that, I think, last amongst the percentages of that pie chart here. I will go the not contract year at 62%.
Okay.
Like, I think that's a huge factor. When he was in that contract year last year, you could tell that was weighing on him all year. As much as he could say what he wants to the media, no, I don't think anybody believed that he wasn't pressing, because he was chasing at a rate he never did before. He was always trying to do too much with every single pitch, like pitches on the outside that you take the other way. He was pulling them and just, gently hitting them into the air. So I'll go heavy on the contract year. I'll go 15% with the Devin Williams, because I think that was a confidence booster for him. And then whatever the rest of that math is, I will put to Juan Soto.
23% would be the Soto factor.
Yeah.
And it's hard to really...
It's a fun exercise.
It is. I think I'd go oddly a little higher on the Devin Williams home run.
Okay.
But not jarringly higher, because it is...
It's one at
just
bat,
one
ultimately.
at bat. Yeah.
But boy, was it a big one. And that can, this in all of sports, sometimes there's one play or one thing that just kind of change your fortunes for a long period of time. Like, we point back to very specific examples of the 2024 Mets turnaround. Like, it was the team meeting. It was moving Lindor to leadoff. Sometimes that one moment just really catapults things.
Yeah, confidence is a hell of a thing in sports. And in baseball, where it is so hard to be not only good at hitting, but consistent at hitting, confidence sometimes could be the most important factor. So, and we're it's going to be funny when it turns with Soto from, whatever this is right now to, now you can't get the guy out. And naturally.
And then Pete will fall back a little bit. Like, that's the name of this game. And baseball is a game of streaks. It's a game of, I love baseball because it's an everyday sport that is not really meant to be analyzed heavily on a day-to-day basis. So you play every day, but every game is not meant to be analyzed in that way. I think our one a week and things like that, I think that's a perfect way to just handle stretches of play, and that's where you get more of a sample size.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Where you look at, that's why the Mets have all these good players on this team. You look at a team like the Royals right now, and Gary's brought this up on the broadcast a few times, and it's really interesting. Out of their everyday players, Bobby Witt has an 847 OPS. He's unbelievable. Michael Garcia has a 770 OPS. They don't have a single player with an OPS at 600 after that, who's an everyday player.
600?
600.
So everyone else is 500 or below?
They're below 600. Yeah. The only other player who's a part-time, he's only had 21 plate appearances, is ironically Mark Canha, who it's amazing. Mark
Connor's
Canha,
favorite.
My favorite player ever. In 21 plate appearances, only 8 games, Mark Canha has a 976 OPS. Now, keep in mind that's 7 hits on the season and 2 walks, but yes, the Royals right now literally are a 2-man, like one amazing player, one average player right now. And sure, Pasquantino and India, like they're going to be better. But the point I'm trying to make is this is why the Mets have all this talent, because there's going to be a moment where Pete's struggling, Lindor's struggling. What's going on with Nimmo, who's been a little home run dependent. Vientos is hurt. Then Juan Soto picks him up. Jesse Winker picks him up. Francisco Alvarez and Jeff McNeil will have their moments. So, yeah, I know that stat kind of blew your mind, huh? No player at 600 OPS or they're all below that. Yeah.
Someone should ask Luis Severino what he thinks about the Royals lineup. They got one good hitter.
Yeah, that's very fair. Fair play. All right, we're going to do a little news segment here, and this is one that it just had to happen because I love this. Every time you send out the tweet for Mailbag Questions, Joe, or on the Apple reviews, or in the YouTube comments, I would say like 30% of the questions are pitching lab related, honestly, at this point, and for good reason. The pitching lab has become this grand mystery at this point that I'm almost like going to be outside the gates, like screaming to let me in. I just got to see what's happening in here at this point. But besides that, Tales from the Pitching Lab, I think is going to be a reoccurring segment on the Mets pod quite often because there's just a new guy every week, Joe, that we're like, what's going on here? And this isn't a new guy because the Mets pod was irrationally excited about the addition of Griffin Canning when it happened, Joe. Yeah, I know, like you really talked me into this one. Like the third day he was under contract here, and I'm like, all right, Griffin Canning, 6th man. Like I feel pretty good about this. 21 innings pitched. He's got a 3.43 ERA. He's 2-1. And what are the actual adjustments though, Joe? It's not like he's just going out there and doing the same thing that he got battered around when he was with the Angels. But if Griffin Canning pitches to a sub-4 ERA this year, Joe, this is the Stearns masterclass that I think is somehow more impressive than Severino and Manaea last year.
If Griffin Canning can post a sub-4 ERA, no matter who the Mets sign to be starting pitchers, we just have to automatically accept it's going to work out. That's just the way I think we have to look at this thing. But if you look back to last year, one thing about Griffin Canning, he was, despite throwing 170-something innings, he was working through a back injury. So I think that did play a role. And if you look at his 2023 numbers, I think his ERA was like 4.2. So he was around the league average pitcher the year before. So I think Canning, what I've noticed over this stretch so far, his slider usage is something the Mets have really emphasized. Last year, he threw a slider about 24% of the time. This year, it's his most used pitch at 37% of the time. What you want to do nowadays in like modern pitching sounds like rocket science, right? Throw your not good pitches less and throw your better pitches more. And across the board, though, what I will say about Canning, the two primary pitches are the slider and the four-seam fastball. The Mets, I'm sure, have worked a little bit on the shape of it to adjust just like a little couple things there. But we're talking about from a run value, which is on Baseball Savant, they assign a run value 0 being, like a net average, and then there's positive and negative. In 2024, Griffin Canning's four-seam fastball was a negative 12 run value, which was simply just one of the worst four-seam fastballs in the sport. So far this year, +3. His slider this year is 0, so it's basically an average pitch as far as run value goes. Last year, -6. So those are
it's crazy.
It's just been a stark change in 2 pitches. He's getting a little healthier than he was last year. Griffin Canning is a guy when we were getting ready to do our season preview, and I think you set the over under on starts at him at, what was it, like 17 or 18?
Yeah,
I was
right
like,
around there.
I'm slamming the over. Griffin Canning might be the most like reliable guy for innings in this Mets rotation. And, I'm not saying he's going to pitch to that 3.4 ERA that he has so far this year for the entirety of the season. But look, this is a staff. Obviously, David Stern's at the top of the food chain there, but Jeremy Hefner's such a great pitching coach. And then the development staff down in Port St. Lucie, when these guys get to spring training, they get to go into the lab and work on things. Griffin King is just another example of why the Mets are becoming one of the preeminent organizations when it comes to pitching development.
It feels like the Mets, besides getting guys that have physical ability to have better results than what they've had in the past, which is how you pay below value compared to the results you're going to get, right? It's really the Moneyball philosophy down to its core in certain ways.
Yeah.
Is that also you need guys to just lean into this. And athletes, man, when you get to the top of the mountain, Major League Baseball, like you are in a percentile that is so rare, no matter whatever you do in the major leagues, that understandably not all athletes are receptive when for 15 plus years they've been doing something a certain way and then they're told, how about this? So having these guys like clearly Canning who are receptive to change in hopes of achieving their best, it's trust, right? And I think it's not something that you should be guaranteed. But what the Mets did, and Severino, credit to him and thank you to him, he had a lot of quotes after last year that pumped up the Mets organization, from the health, sports science, all kinds of their staffs that they have on hand, that they proved something, that what the Mets have invested in. Now you saw it with Severino and Minaya last year, where somebody like Griffin Canning came to the Mets on a 1-year, $4.25 million deal with an open mind, and look at the results right now. And on the other side of it too, Joe, like look at Tyler McGill right now, who we're always skeptical if he can carry this through an entire baseball season. But McGill right now is another guy that seems willing to put in the work and change certain things and for the better. So there's part of it where it's like, hey, do you have the physical profile to succeed in this situation? But also, are you going to sit there and work with Jeremy Hefner and this entire staff and be willing to add a new Clay Holmes is obviously the pinnacle example, because Holmes is somebody that'll literally add a pitch and change the entire role that he has. But that is a big aspect of what this regime is looking for as well.
It is. And Clay Holmes is kind of a guy we haven't really talked about much in the last couple of weeks. He's just stacking these starts on each other. You can see the improvement from start to start from him. So I feel really good about where he's at. Tyler McGill, he's always been the kind of guy that he'll put together a few good starts, right? And it's just like, oh, there's Tyler McGill, and then he'll kind of fall off. I went
classic number 6, right?
Yeah. I went back to last year, Connor, and I know it's tough. You don't really want to do year over year, combining them together. But if you go back to his start on August 30th, which is when he came back to the Mets, and he obviously had a really strong September, over 11 starts from August 30th of 2024 through yesterday's start, Tyler McGill has a 1.76 ERA. 11 starts, ERA below 2. He's attacking hitters. The stuff has always been there. It's when he's trying to pick off the corners and he's trying to be a little too cute. He just needs to be a big, strong power pitcher that goes after guys. And he's buying into the program too. And briefly about Jeremy Hefner, you talked about the trust and just buying into what you're being sold. I think the advantage that the Mets have with Jeremy Hefner is that he was a big league pitcher. So he was a big league pitcher that very much understands the analytical side of things. So whatever type of pitcher the Mets hand him, he knows how to talk to them. If you're a guy that's into the numbers, into the spin rates, into the induced vertical break on your pitches and the horizontal break and, the seam shifting and all this stuff, if you're into that, Jeremy Hefner could talk that language. If you aren't, which there's plenty of players who are not, he could talk just baseball language with you. So that's why I think Jeremy Hefner is such a unique, part of this organization, that it's not just he's the big league pitching coach. He has established the Mets pitching development plan all the way down to the bottom of the minor leagues. So he is a valuable guy that has made it through like 100 regime changes. So if that doesn't tell you how good of a pitching coach and pitching mind that Jeremy Hefner is, I guess you'll just never be convinced.
Joe, do you think that he'll want to be a big league manager one day, or is this just a masterclass role for him that because it's the classic case of like the masterful play caller, right? That becomes a head coach, and you don't know what that's going to look like. But in baseball, it's a little different because coordinators become head coaches in the NFL literally every single year. And the good thing about the Mets is if they like him, he's never going to leave for the same job because the Mets will always offer him the most money.
Interestingly enough, I'll tell you one thing. It was maybe like a year ago I heard about this, that if Jeremy Hefner is ever to leave the role of pitching coach, it would be to move to the front office, not to go up in the coaching ranks where maybe he could spend a little more time with family, a little less time on the road. So if there is something different for Jeremy Hefner, like maybe it's that GM spot that David Stearns has never filled. I don't know. I'm pure speculation. This is nothing, sourced or anything, but there was something, not this time last year, but sometime during the summer, I remember asking around. They're like, yeah, if Hefner's ever not a pitching coach, I don't think he's looking to be a manager. I think it would be a front office move and maybe, heading pitching development or maybe even hire, like I said, a GM type of role, which we've seen some coaches move into that role.
Imagine that, like vice president of pitching personnel, and it's almost basically just a GM for pitching. Or
Eric Jagers is the vice president of pitching. That's his actual title on the directory. So he runs pitching. So I guess he would have to be the president of pitching because he'd have to be one step ahead of Eric Jagers.
We're happy right now to have Hefner in the dugout every single night for the Mets, and it's obviously been pretty fruitful and great results. All right, let's go down on the farm as we always do here, Joe. We got a question to kick off down on the farm from Londa, 5-star review. Thank you. Are you at all worried about Brandon Sproat's low strikeout rate? He seems to be pitching much better, but only 8 strikeouts in his last 14.1 innings and 1 in 6 innings this last start. Joe, what have you seen from Sproat that's led to better results, but less swing and miss kind of stuff?
I'm actually not concerned because I know he has the stuff to miss bats. What I noticed in his last outing, which was excellent, 6 innings, and he 6 shutout, as you can see on the graphic below. He only struck out 1 guy, but attacking, and that's something that Sproat talked about in spring training that he learned from AAA. With the ABS system, you can't really pick off corners, or if you just miss, it's simply not a strike. That's the way it works at that level. So he would get behind in counts and he would just pump fastballs down the middle and they would get smacked. Now he's being a little more aggressive in the zone, and something that if you listen to this show, you've heard me talk about it, the difference between control and command. Control is throwing strikes. Command is within the confines of the strike zone. And throughout this year thus far, Sproat has had much better command within the strike zone, and his control's better too. His walks per 9, it's still not ideal. It's 4.4 over 9. But last year at the AAA level, it was almost 6. So it's a step in the right direction from a strike throwing standpoint. And he's still, mid 90s, upper 90s. I haven't seen any hundreds from him, I don't believe, yet this year. But I think that's going to come as the weather warms up. If you've watched some of the starts in Syracuse, you want to bundle up at home watching them. It's so cold and miserable where they're playing. So Brandon Sproat, to me, no concern on the strikeouts. I think that'll get better as the year progresses. And I think he's still trekking towards, a Citi Field debut here. I would say in the next month, but if you just have 5 Cy Youngs in the rotation, what's the point in never taking him out for a young guy?
Well, the beauty of it is, like you just said, Joe, is that there's not this rush for Sproat anymore.
Right.
Remember, if it was like, hey, if the Mets keep running out of arms, like, we got to get him up here? Do we got to get him up here in June when it's kind of a coin flip? So it's really nice that hopefully that timeline could stay as is. You bringing up the ABS system, it brings in a topic that we don't even have in our rundown. But between the Aaron Judge foul home run, the Buto miscall at first base when the Mets didn't have a challenge, is just, the both of them are just so egregious. I know part of us being harder on umpires in the sport is probably that we have more technology than ever. Like, we get 10 angles of a replay to show you why they were wrong, whether it's a strike or a ball, or whether it was safe or out, or whether it was foul or not foul. By the way, that's a good thing. I want the calls to be right in the sport. Isn't it kind of amazing though, Joe, especially when there's minor league stadiums at hand, that there's no laser technology for foul balls at this point?
Can
Or
we can we
like,
just put a 360 camera on top of the foul poles and get
I
them
mean,
in there really
seriously
tight so the wind
though,
doesn't blow them off, and then it could catch wherever the ball's coming from?
the fact that we had in the span of just a couple of days, Judge, which was a home run, obviously, and they
Yeah,
still got it
right.
wrong. I don't know how. And Soto, which was close, I get it. But Soto's reaction kind of tell you he would
Yeah,
have called it foul.
right.
And they got it right eventually. The Buteau one where he beats the runner to first by like a full stride. And
Yeah.
it's not like, I get the Mets don't have a challenge and they don't want teams to have 8 challenges to slow down the game. But that's one where you need, as an ump, to recognize you need replay assist or the league has to call down. I understand there are people that want less technology because they don't want to slow the game down, but we have to get the calls right that are clear as day a certain way, Joe. And it's just amazing to me some of the things still lacking in the sport, where the fair or foul controversies, I feel like, are not going anywhere right now.
I wonder, and this is just me spitballing, can you set up where there's like a 7th inning or later challenge that just gets like introduced like late in the game? Because you may use it for calls that frankly you shouldn't have to, because they shouldn't have gotten wrong earlier in the game, but now you don't have a challenge to use it. And crew chief review is something that the NFL does. I know NBA, it's a little excessive. I know people complain about that. That it seems
Yeah.
like in the last like 2-3 minutes of a game, they're checking every single thing.
Yeah. And hockey,
I
there's no
yeah,
consistency. Goaltender interference
yeah,
is like flip a coin and see what happens. So it's not perfect in any
yeah.
sport.
I was just gonna say I have no idea what hockey does, but
It's really bad.
yeah, but ultimately, I stand with you. I just want the calls to be right. I don't care about the human element, so to speak. Like to me, maybe it's just my age where I'm youngish, but I'm not super young. I'm kind of in between, where like I do try to see both sides of things, but I don't think, well, it's a human element, it's okay that the call was wrong is a suitable thing to say.
I think my problem is baseball is the easiest of the 4 sports to fix. Like, a ball
Out
is
or safe,
out
fair or foul.
you either beat the guy to the bag or you didn't. It's
Yeah,
either fair or foul.
yeah,
And we have enough camera angles that we always know. Like, we always know. There's never one where you're like, it's too close to change. It's like, no, it was a tie at the bag. That means he's safe. So where the NFL, like obviously the year they did pass interference, it's subjective and it's a mess. Where
right.
hockey, same thing with goaltender interference,
Yeah.
that's a mess. You brought up the problems with the NBA. So that's my problem with baseball, is that it's the one sport that replay should be so simplified, and yet we still don't feel like we're there.
Which,
You're listening to
by
the
the
Mets
way,
Pod.
Connor,
Go ahead,
before
Joe.
you do sorry to cut you off for the mid-show read, but just wanted to shout out John DeMarsico and the SNY team for that angle of the Juan Soto. Like, there's no debate that was a foul ball, because we had that angle that we could see on
It was
TV.
perfect.
It's literally just missed. So shout out to the SNY crew.
As sad as it made me in real time, you got a clear-cut angle almost
Yeah.
immediately. You're listening to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast. All right, Joe, my new favorite time of the week, the scoreboard, where we review our predictions from last week. Yes or no, will Mets starters continue to lead the league in ERA after this week? Joe didn't believe in them. I did. The Mets starters continue to lead the league in ERA after last week. I get a point. Over-under push was at 2 for Luisangel Acuna stolen bases. We both went with the push. He stole 2 bases. Good start for us here, Joe. Over-under push at 2 for Pete Alonso home runs. We both pushed. He hit 2 home runs. We both get a point. Over-under push was at 6 for Juan Soto walks. Joe, you went over. I went under. He had 3. I get a point. Over-under push was at 1 for number of runs given up by Stanek, Reed Garrett, Max Kranick this week. They hadn't given up a run at all 3 of them going into the week. Joe, you went under 1 run. I went over. They actually gave up 6 runs. Kranick, unfortunately, we love him on this show. He was responsible for 5 of them. I get the point. Reed Garrett continues to not have given up a run, which is just out of this world. And Ryan Stanek, only 1 run given up. Over-under push was at 4 for Mets wins. Joe, you were the ultimate believer. You went over. I pushed at 4. I thought even that could be rich. They won 5 games. You get a point. Check this out, Joe. Here we are after another strong week where I won 5-3. We are tied now. on the season, 13-13. I'm trying to keep this thing interesting leading up to Memorial Day weekend, Joe. And I feel like you got a little too confident after 2 championships. You're just kind of coasting. You have a Super Bowl hangover?
It's tough, Connor. I was about to call you cocky Connor. I think that's coming about, but you know what? It's all about self-evaluation on this show and self-reflection. So I need to look in the mirror and figure out what I'm doing wrong, because being tied, unacceptable for a 2-time champion.
Well, boy, do I have the starter for you this week. 6 games, 2 against the Phillies, 4 against the Nationals. Yes or no? A classic from last year. Will Starling Marte hit a home run this week? Joe, I kick us off, winning the week. I can't believe this, but I'm saying no, he just doesn't play enough, right? I went with yes every week last year, and it just never worked out for me. Marte's just not playing enough, which means all of you out there should anytime, any game home run bet Marte, because it feels like he's due, but I got to go no.
Connor, disappointed. I figured this was a lock for you to just stay on your own thing, just like I'm on the platoon all the time. You're on the yes for Starling Marte hitting home runs, but I'm with you. I'm gonna go no. I don't think the playing time's necessarily gonna be there enough. But big strong guy. Let's see if he gets in a game or two, he could easily knock one out.
Over under push is at 2, Joe. Pete Alonso home runs for Raging Hot Pete.
I'm gonna push, keep it at 2. Pete Alonso. Nothing, I think, is slowing him down right now, and I feel good about those 4 games against the Nationals.
That's what it is for me. Why I'm pushing as well here. Just he plays well against division teams, Pete, and he's just scorching hot right now. Where the thing is, when you look at 2 home runs in 6 games, you sit there and go, "Man, that's a lot." But Pete's just the kind of bat where he could do it in 3 at bats. That's the problem with it. So I'm going to push as well with the home runs. Now it gets a little trickier. Over under pushes at 2 for Francisco Lindor home runs, which it feels like he's going to hit one every time he's up, though. I'm going to go under here, Joe. Lindor, the power has to cool off a little bit in 6 games. Even if he hits one, you still get to clear this. I'll go under.
This is one I'm really battling with because, as you said, he's been on fire. Leadoff home runs, obviously the big one on Monday against Philly. I guess I'll push. I want us to have some different things here. Like I was teetering between under and a push. Since you went under, I'll push. And Lindor is locked in at the plate, so I just need him to hit 2. I don't need him to hit 15.
All right, over under push is at 3. 3, Joe. Starters going 6 innings.
Interesting. We're getting confident in these starters now, right?
That's a big number.
Yeah, that's a big number. I know we are doing over 6 games, so will 50% of the time them go 6+. I'll go under. I think you're seeing a lot of pitching into the 6th and then not making it through. So I'll go under, but this pitching staff is heading in the right direction either way.
Yeah, we have a similar mindset here, is that number one, it's only 6 games. Like you said, if you're going 50% of your starters giving you 6 innings, that the math has not mathed that way for the Mets this year. And you expect it to turn the deeper into the season you go.
Yes.
But it's just not. The trends would tell you that this is not going to happen. I would love to see it happen. Feels like Peterson is the guy we lean on for this. Maybe Senga gets going with this, but I have to go under as well here, Joe. Over under push is at 6 for Juan Soto hits. So 6 games, 6 hits. Joe, I'm going over because I'm just going to keep believing that Juan Soto is just going to catch fire here, and I think it's soon.
Connor, I don't want to follow you, but over. Juan Soto's at bats over the weekend were great. He just missed that home run, obviously, on Monday night. So I think Juan Soto's on the precipice of starting to look a lot more like himself, much more comfortable at the plate. So I'll go over on the hits as well.
I think it was the Saturday game, because I know that he had the 3 RBI game after this. One of the games against the Cardinals, Joe, I swear he hit the ball 100+ miles an hour in like 2 of his 3 at-bats, where it was, and he just hit it to gloves. It just happens. And eventually he's going to have some soft hits. So,
and once he elevates some of those, because some of the really hard hit ones have been on the ground or line drives at infielders. Once he gets elevating those a little bit, they'll be going to the real back of the old. Is it Pepsi porch? No, Coca-Cola corner. Coca-Cola
Juan
corner,
Soto
not the Pepsi
corner.
porch.
Come on, that's how we got him here. All right, that's Joe, take us home on the Mets wins. The over/under push is at 4.
I'll push here. I think 4-2 is a good stretch for them. Not feeling quite as, I guess, confident as last week for no particularly good reason, where I went 5 as the over, but I'll push. I think this is a really good Mets team. figure you split one of these next two with Philly, and then, if they take 3 out of 4 from Washington, that seems reasonable to me.
Man, I hate that we're almost the same on these, but I just feel
Yeah.
the same way. It's because they won the first one against the Phillies. The Phillies are still a really, really good team, as we saw in the ninth inning last night. And then, so say they split with the Phillies, then you're required to beat the Nationals at that level. The Mets are
Yeah.
playing really, really good, playing on a 5 out of 7 pace. I don't know if they'll just keep that up consistently. I'm going to push as well. So a lot of the same for us this week. We'll see how, what's the one that's going to break it up? I think you went with
What did
Lindor home
Lindor?
runs.
I pushed the Lindor home. Yeah,
So
I put.
that, yeah, that's going to be the big deciding factor for this week, and we'll kind of see where next week brings us. All right, mailbag time here, Joe. We got Poppy in the South with a 5-star review. Thank you, Poppy. I have 2 questions. Are we concerned about Mark Vientos' slow start? Pete is protecting Soto, but who's going to protect Pete if not Vientos? Also, can you guys find out where Lindor got that sick multicolored gemstone necklace? It is so sick. Yeah, Lindor has the best aesthetic maybe in baseball at this point. I mean, he's got something different every day, whether it's the glove color, the sleeve color, the cleats, the necklace. I don't know where he's got it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think Joe's going to have an answer for you if it was my guess, Joe.
Connor, I was just going to say, if you're looking for me to tell you about Francisco Lindor's style and things like that, you are barking up the wrong tree, pal. I got my quarter zips and my T-shirts, and I'm just a regular mid-30s guy.
Yeah, it's a shame that Siri is hurt because he was the only guy challenging Lindor for that title between the earrings, the necklace. Yeah. Obviously, yeah, Lindor has style. Let's get back to the original question, Joe. It felt like Vientos was starting to turn things around before he had this many injuries. So you and I were never really overly concerned with Vientos' slow start. It's just that these things get magnified at the start of every baseball season. I think he'll be fine. I said a show or two ago that my bigger concerns have been lying with Nimmo because of the injuries he's had through the course of his year at his age and how different of a hitter he is now. And I still don't really have any answers on how I feel about that. It's just a total wait and see approach.
Vientos homered 2 straight games, I think it was, or 2 out of 3 right before he just didn't drink enough water and cramped up in his groin. So Vientos, get back on that hydration. But no, I'm not particularly worried about him. And the one thing I want to bring up in this question, where it's, Pete's protecting Soto, but who's going to protect Pete? You can't protect everybody. That's not, and these teams aren't just going to be walking all these hitters. Like I think
an all-star team.
Yeah.
Who's protecting Francisco Alvarez?
Yeah. There's no, it's not Barry Bonds where people are just going to intentionally walk everybody throughout a lineup. So I feel fine about Vientos, but the fair question is on the Nimmo front, like who is the right guy to bat in that cleanup spot right now? It feels like Vientos over the last, few games that we've seen of him, at least he's putting together better at bats than Nimmo is. The Nimmo conundrum is something that I think we could spend, some more time here in a minute, but Vientos to me, not particularly concerned.
Yeah, I think he was starting to get his confidence back a little bit. All right, Casey W22, thank you for the 5-star review. Is it just me or is it time to break away from batting Nimmo 4th or even 5th? It seems like it's really changed his approach for the worse, making him an all-or-nothing guy and perhaps moving him down to 7th can allow him to be a spark plug for the bottom of the lineup, and once he's right, Mendy can move him back up in the order. So obviously they've already kind of flashed their hand a little bit with this. But yeah, Joe, I think it's time to have this conversation. It just the approach is entirely different. And I don't know if it's from the spot or the opportunities he's put in, but you do have to ask yourself, is this the best case for the Mets could be if this carries on with Nimmo is that one of Alvarez or McNeil comes back with a little bit of, lightning in a bottle and can move up temporarily into that spot. I don't think it's sustainable. And it allows Nimmo to recollect himself. But the problem is, Joe, barring when Winker plays, and now with Vientos hurt, there's not a guy you could just throw into this spot unless you move everybody down and Nimmo at the 2 hole, which is also weird.
Yeah, you're not. I'm certainly not moving Nimmo up. Yeah, I'm not opposed to the move Nimmo down temporarily conversation. I think the play would be you bat Vientos cleanup and Jesse Winker 5th. Like I think that would be. Yep. That would probably be the most logical move. The approach thing, I will say in watching Nimmo over the last, 3 games or so, the at-bats have been a little bit better, and he had the big RBI singles, so it's not that he's turning a corner necessarily, but I have seen him at least take a few more pitches than he was, when we were talking this time last week, where it seemed like the first 2 pitches of an at-bat, he had to try to put the ball in play. And part of it, Connor, not necessarily just the spot in the order where Nimmo is placed, but we talk about how often Lindor is getting on base, how often Juan Soto is getting on base. Despite what Juan Soto is doing, he's still getting on base 40% of the time. How often Pete Alonso, if he's not driving in runs by hitting him over the fence, he's on base. So Nimmo is consistently coming up with these guys on base, and there's got to be some pressure that he is internally feeling that he needs to drive those runs in. And if it's a pitch he thinks he likes, he has to swing at it. So maybe dropping him down, 6, 7, just take him down a spot or 2. Maybe that would just take a little bit off of his plate. And I need Brandon Nimmo to be Brandon Nimmo. Like, he's a big, strong guy. He can put the ball over the wall. He could drive in runs. He's fine as a middle of the order hitter, but I need that approach to match that, not just he can't be all or nothing on either end where he's just trying to walk all the time or he's just swinging at everything trying to hit home runs. We need to find that happy medium, and maybe just a little removal of pressure down in the order could help.
Yeah, it feels like the big spot has found him a lot this season, and it's leading to him being more aggressive than we're used to, and it just hasn't paid off in the way that you'd hope. The best version of Nimmo is a guy that kind of wears pitchers down. So it's a long season, but it's definitely something that everybody's keeping an eye on. Our last mailbag question for today is a 5-star review. Thank you again, River McGuire. With the offensive inconsistencies that the Mets currently have so far, what would the ideal lineup be in your opinion when McNeil and Alvarez return? Here's mine. Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Winker, Vientos, Nimmo, Alvarez or Terens, McNeil or Beatty, and Acuna/Taylor. Through you have a 4 of 6 of Vientos, Marte, and Nimmo when Marte is the DH against lefties, and keep the rest of the lineup the same. What are your thoughts? I mean, from a logic perspective, Joe, that makes the most sense to me. And it kind of piggybacks off our combo with Nimmo maybe being in the 6th hole instead. There's also an argument going back to our last question from Casey where maybe you bat Nimmo 7th, and if Alvarez is hitting for power again, which needs to be seen, Alvarez would hit 6th because you put him in a power spot. But what do you think, Joe? Like, that all checks out to me, honestly.
It's not, I don't have a big qualm with it. To me, I think this is a focus pretty heavily on, it has to be, Lindor's a switch hitter or whatever. Then lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, right. I don't believe in lineups having to be lefty, righty all the way down. So I would flip Vientos and Winker. I don't think Winker, as much as I feel, okay about him, and that home run was, really nice on, I don't know if I want him batting cleanup necessarily. I think Vientos is a guy that I want up with those runners in scoring position. We saw what he was able to do in the playoffs last year, and obviously throughout the whole season. I think Vientos is a better fit in the cleanup spot, but otherwise I think that largely makes sense. And, we're talking about, the offensive inconsistencies, and that certainly has been a thing more so in the, bottom part of the order where there's been a lot of up and down. I think these things are going to shake themselves out in a way that this offense is going to be kind of what you and I thought it was going to be coming into the season. And the X factor it was then, and it is now, when Francisco Alvarez gets back into that lineup, what Francisco Alvarez are we getting? Are we getting the one that hit almost 25 home runs as a rookie? Or are we getting the Francisco Alvarez that struggled in 2024? So he's the X factor that I think really takes this whole lineup into shape.
Because he has the power variable, like you just highlighted, Joe, where you look at it like Pete's going to hit his home runs, Lindor and Soto are going to hit their home runs. Oddly enough, Nimmo is a guy that is going to hit his home runs. We just need
he's going to be a 20-plus guy. At the end of the year, that's where he's going to be.
Yeah, so he's going to hit his home runs. It's everything else. Honestly, when healthy, Vientos is going to hit his home runs. I don't doubt that at all. It's a matter of the balance, right? Of one of two things. You pray one of two things happens. Either Jeff McNeil is 80% of the Jeff McNeil that is a big factor for this team, where he's hitting, if Jeff McNeil's hitting 280 for a certain half of the season, or Alvarez is a 25 home run guy, that's probably the X factor you're looking for in those last 3 spots of the lineup. You don't need both to happen. You don't need
Right.
Alvarez to be this 25 home run guy, and Jeff McNeil is 80% of the batting title guy. But if you have one of those two things happens, the way that lengthens the lineup, Joe, for the rest of the season is what everybody is looking and hoping for.
It's a game changer. That's what it comes down to. Is now if you are 6 deep or even closer to 7 deep, like that, now that is a complication for the pitching staffs you're facing on a day in, day out basis. And that's, I think, how the Mets intended to have this lineup built. And obviously they dealt with a couple injuries right out of the gate, but those guys are going to be back. And, that sounds like this weekend, from just reading between the tea leaves of what Carlos Mendoza said on Monday, seems like, this weekend is looking good for both McNeil and Alvarez. And I'm very interested to see how they divvy up the playing time between Alvarez and Tyrone behind the plate and McNeil and Acuna at second base. And is Brett Beatty still on the roster? Are they going to carry him and get rid of Jose Azocar? I'm fascinated to see how this roster is going to shake out over the coming days and how the playing time will be divvied up between Alvarez and Tyrone behind the plate and McNeil and Acuna at second base. So I'm really interested to see. But as David Stern said on Monday, these are good problems to have.
Absolutely, and we'll break down the ramifications of all those expected moves on next week's show. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Spring is the season for new beginnings, and it's the best time to get behind the wheel of a sophisticated new Cadillac SUV. The beginning of something exceptional starts now. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can leave us a review with a question like you heard today. We'll look for those for a future mailbag. And, of course, you can watch the show on SMY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll catch you next week.